A surprise visit. For a few seconds, the three in the kitchen remained frozen. Then, Martin, the first to move, wrenched open the cellar door and disappeared down the stairs. To Laura's relief, she saw that he had carried his plate with him. Bert cast a hasty glance around the room and called out, "Just a minute!" Laura wished she could hide, but no doubt their visitor had already seen her and would wonder why she had left. As for Martin, at least he had been farthest from the window, and being black had been less noticeable. Of course, the person at the door might even be Joel Todd. This morning she was willing to have him see her, since she was wearing a starched blue house dress and her hair, smoothly brushed, was pulled back and tied with a blue ribbon. Bert's eyes questioned her, and she answered for the benefit of listening ears. "I declare, Bert, you're the slowest moving boy. Whoever's at that door will think we're still abed." She noticed too late that the cellar door was ajar, but she did not dare close it, for Bert was already drawing the bolt on the back door. A tall, spare, middle-aged woman with wispy gray hair stood in the doorway. Laura, recognizing their nearest neighbor from a quarter of a mile up the road, did not know whether to be glad or sorry. She would have preferred Joel, but at least Mrs. Fitch was better than a slave catcher. Still, she did have a reputation for being a busybody. Bert said with false heartiness, "Good morning, Mrs. Fitch. Come in." "Good morning, Bert. Morning, Laura. You'd better pay attention to those griddle cakes." Laura ran to the stove, where a curl of smoke was arising from the griddle. The pancakes were as black as the stove. She stacked them with the spatula and dumped them into the fire. "Wasteful," commented Mrs. Fitch in her brisk voice. She set a small basket on the table. "I brought you some biscuits. Thought I'd better see how you two young ones were getting along without your father and stepmother." "Just fine," Laura assured her, "and thank you kindly for the biscuits. Can I fix you some pancakes?" "Land's sake, no. I had breakfast over an hour ago. It's past 8 o'clock, you know." Her eyes were busy, swooping over the entire room, lingering on the untidy stack of dishes beside the sink, left from their middle-of-the-night meal. "I won't hold you up," she said. "You must be in a hurry to get on with your chores." She looked pointedly at Bert. "I don't suppose you've taken care of the horse." "Not yet," Bert admitted. What a pity Mrs. Fitch had chosen this morning to visit, thought Laura. It wasn't like Bert to neglect the horse, for he was fond of the lively young filly he had named Sally. Mrs. Fitch's expression showed clearly that this was just what she had expected. "Huh," she said. "You'd better get a hustle on. I know how particular your father is about having the animals fed and watered right on time, and I expect he left you a few other jobs to do besides." "That's right," Bert replied. "I have plenty to do to keep me busy all day and half the night." Still, Mrs. Fitch didn't go. "I notice you haven't started school yet, Laura. Are you going back, or do you think 15 is too old for school?" "I haven't decided yet," said Laura. When she had come north, she had expected to enroll at once, but she had come down with a bad cold the day after she arrived. As the days had passed, she had begun to dread going to a school that would be strange to her. After her long absence, she would know few of the other students, and now that she had made up her mind to return to Virginia, there didn't seem to be any reason to start classes here. At last, the door closed behind Mrs. Fitch, and Bert grinned his relief. "She'll be reporting to Pa what a poor farmer I am." Laura had other worries. "By the way she stayed around and stared at everything, I'm afraid she's suspicious. Do you think she'll go to the sheriff?" "She might." Bert ran his fingers through his hair in a worried gesture. "But on the other hand, she's always interested in other people's business." He pulled open the door to the cellar. "Come on up," he called. Martin bounded up the steps, smiling broadly. "I was all ready for company," he said. "I had the sack on." He looked at the stove. "Sorry about those pancakes. I'll fix some more." "Never mind," said Laura, "unless you or Bert want more." "No more for me," said Bert. "I'm going out to look after Sally and the chickens." He paused with one hand on the latch. "Martin, When I come in, we're going to look for another hiding spot for you. The cellar's the first place the slave hunters will go." "But if I'm in the potato sack, they won't find me." "They might. Some of those fellows have had a lot of practice hunting for fugitives. We have to hide you better." While Bert was caring for the livestock, Martin poured hot water into the wash tub and scrubbed his clothes. Laura went up to make her bed and straighten her room. She was sure that Bert wished she would offer to let Martin use the secret room, but she was not going to do that. If he wanted it, let him ask again. Before long, Bert returned from the barn, and Laura heard the two boys climb the back stairs and enter Bert's room. Had Bert locked the back door, she wondered? Rather than ask him, she went down to check, leaving her bedroom work half finished. The door was bolted, no doubt about it. Bert was more responsible than he used to be. Laura turned around and surveyed the kitchen. Martin's clothes were drying on a rack behind the stove. Dishes from breakfast and the night before littered the table and work shelf. She wrinkled her nose in distaste at the dirty dishes. "Oh well," she said to herself, "I might as well get started." Bert was too busy getting Martin settled to think of kitchen work, and besides, he had the outside chores to do. Once again, she wished she were in Virginia. A housewife there was busy enough, heaven knew, with planning the meals and seeing to it that the slaves did what they were supposed to do. But at least she and Aunt Ruth hadn't had to clean up the kitchen. The people in the South had a different way of life. They had more time for music and books and parties. Laura carried the butter and milk down to the cellar. She soon located the place where they belonged, a box that was set into the cool dirt and flagstone floor. This box was only for the day's supply of perishable food, she recalled. The big cans of milk and the crock of butter were stored outside in the spring house, where cold running water kept them fresh. She climbed back to the kitchen, put water on the stove to heat, and began to scrape and stack the dishes. When her mother was alive, Laura had enjoyed helping in the kitchen. Now, doing the once familiar tasks, she found herself humming. Where did Abby keep the dishpans? Laura wondered. She was startled to realize that this was the first time since she had come home that she had cleared up after a meal. Abby hadn't asked her to do a thing. Alone in the kitchen and busy with her hands, Laura shook off some of the gloom that had weighed her down since her arrival in the North. Abby had been kind to her from the first. Funny she had never married before. She must be all of 30. Being warm-hearted and quite pretty, you'd have thought some man would have noticed her. Well, Pa had noticed. It was easy to see he thought she was perfect. He was always making little jokes and looking at her to catch her eye and watch her laugh. Abby made all of Pa's favorite dishes, and Laura had several times seen her give him a quick kiss when he came in from the barn or the fields. Seeing them together and how happy they were made Laura feel more lonely than ever. She wondered how Abby felt about the Underground Railroad. Probably she was in favor of helping the slaves. She seemed to think everything Pa did was just right. Laura found the dishpans on the bottom shelf of the cupboard and scooped soft soap from a crock into one of them. As she lifted the tea kettle from the stove, a distant sound made her pause. The dogs were howling again. They were still searching for Martin.